The New York Jets shut out the Carolina Panthers yesterday, and while it was still just a preseason game, we learned a lot of really important things about this team. What is going on, guys? Welcome back to Talking Jets with Tigo. My name is Tigo, and today we're going to be talking about the Carolina Panthers game a little bit, but we're not going to be going over like the pros, the cons, like what we did yesterday, right? It's a preseason game. You got to take that at its face value, and we got to remember and take everything with a grain of salt. I believe it was 2008 when the Detroit Lions won all 4 of their preseason games before going 0-16, right? Like, it's preseason. Let's not overreact, but there were a lot of key things that we learned from that game that can really help debunk some of the biggest concerns that Jets fans and the media have had about the Jets moving forward. I think the biggest thing that we saw yesterday from that game was how deep the New York Jets defensive line and just defense as a whole is. Remember that we rested 10 defensive players. Those are the 10 premier starters for our football team. None of those guys played, and we largely played our backups against the Carolina Panthers' first-team offense. Their first-team offensive line, their quarterback, wide receiver core, the whole nine. Now, let's put some context on it. Carolina rested some players, but Carolina's offensive line is right now projected to be the 11th or 10th best offensive line in football. And our secondary defensive line, like pass rushing unit, absolutely dominated those guys. It's going to show if Jermaine Johnson and Will McDonald and Bryce Huff, if those guys are our backups, what does that say about Carl Lawson and JFM and the likelihood and the potential that they're going to have when actually pass rushing, but also the continued onslaught of attack that this defense is going to be able to provide from a front four perspective? The New York Jets blitz the third fewest in the NFL, according to last year's statistics. And we created like the 11th most pressure. I think it's somewhere along those lines, with just attacking with 4 guys. And a lot of those players that we're looking at that are attacking, that were part of the team last year into this year, got better. We now have Jermaine Johnson truly playing up to that not number one, but that first round pick pedigree that we all expected from him last year and didn't get to see in a large sample size. Will McDonald is absolutely vicious and adding more depth to an already lethal pass rushing set for the New York Jets. It's just phenomenal what we saw from the defense, which should put a lot of people at ease, because it's always hard to project a top 5 unit from one year to the next, with especially how much turnover we see in NFL rosters. We lost key members to the defense this year. That's a reality. Sheldon Rankins, Nathan Shepard played big roles for the defense last year, and we had no idea what we were going to get from guys like Al Wood and Quentin Jefferson. But from yesterday's game, because both of those guys played, we just saw how lethal this defensive line, and more importantly, this defense can be. Now, moving forward onto the offensive side of the ball, one of the biggest concerns that we've all had about the offense was always going to be around the offensive line. We didn't have any worry at quarterback. A lot of us had a worry at running back, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. We didn't really have a worry at wide receiver or tight end, and yesterday proved why we shouldn't. Largely yesterday, I think only 2 offensive starters didn't play or 3, because Garrett Wilson didn't play in terms of like the starters. It was Garrett Wilson, Elijah Vera Tucker, and Aaron Rodgers were the only offensive starters who didn't play yesterday from what I remember, and we played largely against the first team defense in Carolina, except they rested Brian Burns, which is a massive piece. I'm disappointed that Brian Burns didn't get to play, because I would have loved to see what our offensive line could do against a truly elite pass rusher, and that's exactly what Brian Burns is. But besides the point, we saw that our coaching staff, specifically in Keith Carter, came into this game, evaluated what this defensive line was going to do, partnered up with Nathaniel Hackett to figure out what the play calling design was going to be for this game, and came up with an offensive line protection plan that absolutely worked wonders for the New York Jets. Zach Wilson able to go 14 of 20, hitting a touchdown, making his completions, staying in the pocket without getting too much pressure. It was a overall really good day for the offensive line, and it was because we attacked the defense with a plan of attack. We're going to take out the edges for a short amount of time. We're not going to ask our tackles to do something that they don't necessarily excel at, and we're not going to ask them to just stand up and hold these really, really quick pass rushers. We're going to take the legs out from under them and get the ball out quickly. This is something we didn't see from the offense last year. Game planning specifically for your opponent. Mike LaFleur seemed to be the type of offensive coordinator and play caller that said, this is my plan. It works against every single defense. I'm not going to adapt. I'm not going to adjust. This is what we're going to do. And Nathaniel Hackett didn't do that. Nathaniel Hackett said, here is my system. How can we tailor it to the quarterback that we have under center and to the opponent that's in front of us? And partnered with new offensive line coach Keith Carter to execute that plan perfectly. And we got good games out of Billy Turner and Max Mitchell, who both have been crucified by the media, by the content creator guys, including myself, from their inability to be able to protect Zach Wilson. How are they going to protect Aaron Rodgers? And they showed exactly how they are going to be able to do that. And on top of that, once the second team came on and you got to see Mekhi Becton play over 30-plus snaps when you include the special team snaps, and his wanting to keep going into the game, but being pulled by coaching staff because they wanted to see some of the other tackles, is very telling upon how he's moving and progressing through this injury, which is really, really exciting. And maybe the offensive tackle panic was just a little bit premature. And I think the biggest thing that we learned from yesterday was that I think our running back room is going to be okay. No disrespect to Dalvin Cook and all that he does, but I don't necessarily see him as a positive for the team anymore. We all know about the underlying numbers and his fumble problems and his pass protection problems and all of those things. And he is a liability in those areas in like a massive, massive way. That being said, he would have been a good addition, especially with what we saw from our running backs last year, which definitely was a concern. With all of that being said, the fantastic part is we finally got to see what a revitalized Michael Carter looked like. He looked like year one Michael Carter, which is absolutely phenomenal because you want to see Michael Carter playing at that high of a level. We need him to play at that high of a level, because right now, he's the only running back that's slated to make the 53-man roster that's not named Breece Hall, with a true third down back type of level of play, a pass-catching running back. Bam Knight showing his ability between the tackles and to fall forward and to really just put the hurt on linebackers and corners and safeties who come down to get him. Israel Abanikanda finally showing off his game-breaking speed. It really made me feel comfortable in the New York Jets running back room moving forward. And ultimately, the biggest thing that I think we really needed to learn after watching the Carolina Panthers game is that, hey, can we at least get to week one? I know the idea of wanting to panic and to hit the panic button early in a year that's so important is something that we're all going to do. I fell for it, and I fell into that trap. But with all of that being said, let's let the plan go. Joe Douglas has been able to turn this team around in a really, really quick, in a really, really short amount of time. Robert Saleh told us what his plan was going to be, and he said it wasn't going to happen quickly, but it was going to get to his vision of what this football team can be. And we're starting to see the beginnings of his vision. And it took time, but look at the turnaround that we're seeing from the offense and from the defense in such a short amount of time. The moral of the story is, I think that the New York Jets are okay. I think that we don't need to hit the panic button immediately and to get into this, oh my gosh, everything is horrible right now. We still have 4 weeks before the home opener. Monday night against the Buffalo Bills. There are still a lot of things that can change from now until then. Trust the process. Trust Joe Douglas. Trust Robert Saleh. They are finally a set of adults leading this team that ultimately have the best interest in the New York Jets at heart. Everything, I think, is going to work out exactly how we want it to. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. And last but not least, go Jets.